Greetings, greetings, my friends. Let's see what will happen this time on the Half-Life 2 Anniversary Edition. Whee! Who they were shooting to?
Boathouse. In Half-Life 1, we discovered we could get a lot of value from scenarios where different AI enemies fight each other. It's fun for players to watch them engage, and it's much easier to observe enemy behavior when you're not the one that's being threatened. This first encounter between Antlions and Combine soldiers is designed to be a fun opportunity to ram something with the buggy, but it also serves to highlight the Thumper. By seeing the soldiers use the Thumper to hold off Antlions, we hope more players would come to understand its purpose. We liked how the soldiers demonstrated the value of staying near the Thumper while engaging with the Antlions.
Back on the road. I wonder.
Gordon Freeman! Hurry, get in the basement. We're expecting gunships at any moment. Colonel Cobbage will be glad to see you made it. This steerable rocket launcher is our best bet for taking down a gunship. Ah, hello. I'll be right with you. Now, where was I? Ah, yes. Using the laser guide, you can steer your rocket past the gunship's defenses and prevent it from shooting down your rocket. This will only anger it at first, but if you can survive long enough to make several direct hits, you'll be rewarded with a prize worthy of any mantelpiece. Now, who's going to be the lucky one to carry it into combat? Ah, yes. Gordon Freeman. I couldn't have asked for a finer volunteer. Colonel Odessa Cubbage at your service.
Odessa Cubbage. Odessa Cubbage is an example of the kind of cameo character we found works well. He's an entertaining guy with some entertaining details, living inside his own little bubble. Since he doesn't leave his scenario, he's free to be exaggerated enough to stand out. We started with his model, which was repurposed from a cut section of the game, and named him after the title of a spam email we received. The model was originally a Norwegian fisherman, and it didn't quite fit as an Englishman, so we slapped a mustache on him, and in that moment, Odessa's character was born. He's ultimately a charlatan, with everything about him being fake. His accent, his mustache, everything. He would never put himself in danger, making him the perfect person to hand Gordon the RPG and explain exactly how to use it.
Here, ammo. Laser-guided RPG. The laser guidance feature of the RPG was a huge headache for us because it was difficult to teach. Many playtesters would fire the RPG and then immediately duck behind cover, which meant they didn't see the rocket's flight path. Even worse, they didn't realize the rocket was now turning around to fly back at them. We tried various HUD elements and laser dot indicators to help, but found that most players overlooked them, focusing on the enemy instead. We made as many small improvements as we could, like emphasizing the feature in Odessa's speech and enhancing the audio and visuals around how the gunship shoots down direct RPG shots. While these changes helped some players grasp the feature, we never reached a point where we felt confident that almost everyone understood it. We even considered cutting the feature entirely, but gunship combat without it was much less interesting. The laser guidance forced the player to keep the gunship in sight while the rocket was in flight, but that also meant the gunship had line of sight back, creating a tension we loved.
Flying vehicle audio. The large flying enemies in the game present a unique audio challenge. During combat, they're much more mobile than other enemies, and they often move a significant distance away from the player. They're also really dangerous if they have line of sight. So these factors led us to focus on an audio solution specifically around occlusion. In other words, when you can see the enemy and when the enemy can see you. And we wanted to make a clear audio distinction between when they have that line of sight. So the flying vehicle engine sounds are made up of multiple looping sounds that we play simultaneously. And some of those loops are processed by the DSP system based on the space you're in, while others are played directly and unprocessed. So the DSP system adds more of an environment echoing effect when we run sound through that system. So when the flying object is occluded behind something, it can't see you, we increase the percentage of loops that go through the DSP processing, and it sounds like that object is a little more distant. And then when that enemy emerges from behind an object and it can see you, we play more of the direct sound. So that overall just gives you a sense that the sound is either distant and directionless or more directly in your line of sight. And you can sort of hear it when a helicopter emerges from behind a building. Ideally, you can really hear that difference.
Combine gunship. The gunship was an interesting problem. We had a helicopter flight model already and didn't really have time to build something completely new. So we tuned the helicopter's flight model until it felt different enough, and then derived the gunship's organic animation state from the values coming out of that simulation. We also tried to keep it as truthful as possible. For example, there's a limit as how much it can turn its head to aim its cannon, and if it needs to aim beyond that, it has to alter its flight path to bring the cannon around to bear. It's not allowed to just cheat. The other key feature was its engine sound. We have sound spatialization, so the player can tell roughly where it is, but the gunship is a fast-moving object, and it's up in the air, away from any nearby reference points. As a result, it can be hard to tell exactly how far away it is and how fast it's moving. To fix that, we added a Doppler effect to the engine sound, pitch shifting it based on the gunship's velocity relative to you. It's a subtle effect, but it's extremely effective at subconsciously helping you perceive the gunship's location and direction, critical information letting you know that you're being hunted by it.
NLO to Lighthouse Point. NLO to Lighthouse Point. Come in. This is Colonel Cubbage. Come in, please. Get your car, Doc. He won't get far on foot. Drive safely.
Nice simulation.
E2 Coast 04. This map was actually the first area of coast that we built, before the crane and other elements existed. The drained seabed and rested ships were some of the earliest pieces of art direction we developed. Years later, we showcased the map in our 2003 E3 demonstration, though much of the gameplay was still being figured out at the time. As a result, when we began building out the entire coast section, that demonstration became a useful vision for us to work towards.
Audio over distance. The large-scale spaces in the coast maps led us to seek an audio solution for how sound changes over distance. So for instance, in these maps, an enemy can be well over 100 yards away, and their gun should sound different at that range than when it's up close. We decided to store our sounds in a single stereo file with the near sound in the left channel and the far sound in the right channel. And then during playback, we crossfade, or we change the proportion of sound you hear between those two channels based on the player's distance from the sound. And it was a simple solution that worked well. It helped us with memory constraints. You can easily hear it in action. Just listen to how a Combine soldier's gunshots change as you drive towards them.
We wanted the buggy to be more than just a means of travel, so we decided to attach a gun to it. We chose the Tau Cannon, a Half-Life 1 weapon we liked but hadn't found a place for it in Half-Life 2. The Tau Cannon can shoot through walls, which makes it tricky for level design, so we limited it to the coast section. Once you introduce wall-penetrating weapons, level design becomes much tougher. Furthermore, we mounted an ammunition crate on the back of the buggy, giving the player unlimited SMG ammo throughout coast. This is especially helpful for playtesters who struggled with the infinite antlions spawning from the sand.
I just smashed them. Nice shot.
Crane. The crane took a lot of fine-tuning to get right. Something that needed to generate so much physical force was always risky, given the limitations of our rigid body physics and destruction technology. For example, the magnet was never going to fully meet player expectations for something with that much mass. But because the crane was stationary, we could carefully choose everything within its range and fine-tune as needed. Fortunately, most players didn't seem to notice its rougher edges, likely because of the sheer novelty of interacting with something like it in a vaguely realistic physics environment.
Let's see. Oh? Really? How? How?
Ramming with the buggy. Our physics system is based on rigid bodies, which means it doesn't support any deformation or destruction of objects. If a physical object is hit by something, it can move if allowed, but otherwise nothing happens. So, when you drive the buggy through a glass window, we have to employ some trickery to make things work as expected. Because the window is fixed in place, the physics simulation will actually bounce the buggy off the window. But it does notify our game system that a collision occurred. The game system handles destruction, so it breaks the window into glass shards and tells the physics system to start simulating them. Crucially, the game system also tells the physics system to restore the buggy's state to where it was before the collision. This ensures that the next time physics is simulating, the buggy will drive freely through the now destroyed window. This process does produce a one-frame hitch in the buggy's physics, as it briefly stops and is teleported back to the instant before the impact. We're sorry if knowing this has made Half-Life 2 totally unplayable, but after watching playtests at the time, we decided we actually liked the momentary hitch. It added to the sense of impact.
Beautiful.
Opportunistic moments. Some memorable moments in the game come from the interactions of multiple game systems, but sometimes we realize these moments are likely to happen only rarely. When that's the case, we often wish more players would experience them. There's a tension here. The more we know players will encounter something, the more effort we can put into it. But if it feels too artificial, the moment can come across as forced. The players may not respond as positively. The gunship cinematic death is an example where we nudge things a bit, trying to increase the chances of a memorable moment without being too obvious. The design of this area and the gunship's flight path make it likely that the player and the gunship are in the right spots when it dies. If they are, we trigger the gunship's crash into the cars. If not, it dies in the usual way. It's totally gamey, but playtesters didn't seem to mind when the moment played out well.
Don't mind.
Roller mines. Roller mines were created to fill the need for an enemy that could threaten players while driving the buggy. Since the player in the buggy was essentially a fully physically simulated entity, we thought it would be interesting to also have a physically simulated enemy. The Manhack had already shown us how this approach could lead to an enemy with lots of interesting interactions with the world. So we built the Roller Mine, a ball whose movement is entirely driven by generating torque on itself, and iterated on its behavior until it was fun to drive against. Roller mines aren't particularly dangerous to the buggy, but if you let them stack up, they can become a problem, especially near a cliffside. We also made sure they worked well when the player's on foot, allowing level designers to get a few extra encounters out of them.
What? Where are they? They just... I could pass, of course. Simply. That. I wonder if they're mic or what. Should they even go there? Why not? I know what it is. Nice. What?
Ambush. One of the general challenges of a Half-Life style FPS is that the player is constantly moving forward into spaces they don't know. This means that when they find themselves in combat, they're in unfamiliar areas with no knowledge of how to approach the fight. We use many different methods to help the player with this problem, and this ambush is one example. Upon arrival, the player fights a group of Combine among these houses. During the fight and the exploration afterward, the player has the chance to learn the arena layout. Then, when the player explores up into this attic, we spawn a second wave of Combine. In that second fight, the player now has the advantage of knowing the layout, allowing them to make more tactical decisions in defending against the ambushers.
What's that? No. So it's a marker. Oh.
Crossbow. This is the player's first opportunity to get the crossbow in the game, and looking back, it's somewhat surprising we didn't gate it. It's entirely possible for the player to drive right past it. To make that less likely, we set up the roadblock and vantage point to encourage players to get out of the buggy, at which point they'd spot the crossbow and item crate. Playtesting showed that almost every player stopped and collected the weapon, but this is a case where the difference between playtesting and real play might matter. A playtester who's been playing since the start of Coast may not be as fatigued with exploration as someone who's been playing from the very beginning of the game. So, we placed another crossbow a few levels ahead, directly on the player's path in Nova Prospekt.
How it works? It's crossbow with very hard steel ball. Just spawn. Oh, yeah, it's marked from the gun. It's marked from the gun. Come on. Oh.
Gas station. We had grand plans for this encounter. We envisioned building a gas station that the player would fight around, likely igniting the gas tanks and setting fire to everything. We imagined the player driving away from a raging fire, but budget and performance were harsh constraints in 2003, and the station had to keep getting smaller and simpler to fit into Coast's large levels. Our plans for a dynamic fire system didn't materialize, and building it no longer made sense. There's always a limit to how much work we can justify for a single encounter. In the end, the only remnants of our original vision are the explosive gas tanks.
I think these red shotgunners, they're new.
Gas station. We had grand plans for this encounter.
I don't remember
We
them.
envisioned building a gas station that the player
Maybe
would fight
skin.
around, likely igniting the gas tanks and setting fire to everything. We imagined the player driving away from a raging fire, but budget and performance were harsh constraints in 2003, and the station had to keep getting smaller and simpler to fit into Coast's large levels. Our plans for a dynamic fire system didn't materialize, and building it no longer made sense. There's always a limit to how much work we can justify for a single encounter. In the end, the only remnants of our original vision are the explosive gas tanks.
How he climbed so far?
Area portals. One performance challenge we faced in Coast was handling wide open spaces that included buildings with highly detailed interiors, or at least they were detailed by 2003 standards. When the player was outside, we wanted to allocate as much of our budget as possible to rendering that space, without losing resources to the building interiors. But unless we were willing to board up every window and door, the player could still see inside. To solve this, we created a feature called area portals, placing one in every open window and door. An area portal pre-computes a flat image of the building's interior, and during play, when the player is some distance away, the area portal displays this pre-computed image over the window or door, allowing us to skip rendering the actual interior. As the player approaches, we smoothly crossfade between the area portal's image and the building's actual contents. With careful use, area portals helped us to meet our performance goals on Coast, along with the occasional door that closed itself behind.
Alright, that's all for today.